Hello, Black Eagles. Welcome back to the Black Eagles podcast YouTube channel and another new transfer today, somewhat out of the blue, although we all did kind of expect something to happen. The Beşiktaş have signed another young player from South America. This time it's a Colombian player, Élan Ricardo. And here to talk to us about Ricardo is Simon Edwards. Simon, you are currently in Colombia, and you told me off air you've been there for quite a while. Can you briefly tell our listeners and our viewers what exactly it is you do there in Colombia?
Sure, no problem. Thank you for the invitation. So, I've been in Colombia for around 17 years since I left university, and I've been working as a sports journalist here. And then I moved into working as a scout, and I now work with an agency supporting players. Elan isn't one who's involved with me, so I'm going to be impartial on this conversation. But obviously, I watch a lot of Colombian football, and I've been keeping track of him at Equidad, and it's a very interesting player. So happy to share some information with you guys today.
And how has he developed at La Equidad, I should say, sorry. I saw that last season he played essentially a full season. Before that, it seems like he was coming through the ranks. How did his first full season of professional football as a starter for a top flight club go in Colombia?
Yeah, it went very well. La Equidad is quite a small team in Colombia, but quite successful. They're based in Bogota, in the capital, which is at altitude, not extreme altitude, but notable altitude. And it's a huge city that has Millonarios and Santa Fe, who are the big, popular, established teams. And then La Equidad is a team that was set up in the 80s by an insurance company. So very romantic history. But they've actually just been bought by Ryan Reynolds, which is interesting.
Oh, really? Okay. Is he expanding his network then?
Yeah, it's going to be a different story to the Wrexham story because La Equidad have about 15 fans. So it's not going to be a fan, they're not going to be building on the history. They're going to, I imagine, looking to establish something new. But La Equidad is a team that's always quite successful. They've played quite a lot in continental competitions. They've always been in the top flight for the last 7 or 8 years. And yeah, Elan was kind of a breakout star from last season. So in the first half of last year, he scored 7 goals. Colombian league is split into two across the year, 2 seasons. And in the first season, he scored a lot of goals, which was a bit of a surprise because I wouldn't say he's a particularly predominantly an attacking player. He's a central midfielder who's kind of, I'd say, a deep lying playmaker in terms of on the ball and out of possession. He works hard. He's got good agility. In terms of comparisons, people love a comparison. I'd say if you've watched the national team, I'd say Richard Rios is probably the most similar player. Or maybe in England, maybe someone like Alexis McAllister, who's a player who you see having those qualities of an attacking midfielder, but often does the best work getting the ball deep, receiving under pressure, turning out, progressing the ball, carrying the ball, playing those defense splitting passes. So he's a playmaker, but with the qualities of a kind of a ball winner as well.
Okay. Would you describe him as a particularly tenacious or aggressive player? Because among the Beşiktaş fandom, there's a lot of people who are sort of yearning for a more traditional six, a biter, a little bit of a pit bull, maybe like Gary Medel or Joseph de Souza, who played for Beşiktaş over the last couple of years. But he doesn't quite strike me as that from your description.
No, I would say he does have that. He's not the kind of player who you would first be drawn to his defensive qualities. He's not like like a Kante or a Makalele. He's not that kind of player. He's not solely defined by what he does defensively, and then obviously everything else is a bonus, is a plus. No, I'd say he's very much an all-rounder, but he does like a tackle. He does like a battle. He's quite strong. He's not massively tall, but he's got a good physical presence. But I'd say he likes a slide tackle. He likes the defensive duels, but he's not a player who's defined first and foremost for his being a defender. But he does enjoy the defensive side of the game as well. He likes a tough game, a game with a battle, that kind of stuff. So I think he's the kind of player who will go into a tackle, get the fans on their feet, and get people excited. But he's not the kind of player you sit in front of the defense and just let him defend. You know, he wants to get on the ball. He wants to move forward. He wants to progress. He wants to go looking to get on the ball as well. So he's not like an anchor man who'll just sit, but he does like the defensive side of the game, and he does like throwing himself into a slide tackle. And I think that side of the things will get the fans excited.
Yeah, sounds almost as a complete six, really. The player we had up until recently now, because we loaned him with an option to buy to AS Monaco, was Almuata Al-Musrati. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. He used to play for SC Braga. And his thing was he was really also a deep laying playmaker, fantastic, phenomenal long passes, but he was quite sluggish, quite slow on the turn, and not very combative, kind of shied away from duels even. So when Beşiktaş fans are hearing you describe Elan a little bit as, pronouncing that in French there, Elan as a more playmaking midfielder, maybe they get a little bit scared from that word, but from what I can gather from your description, he's really someone that does it all and doesn't shy away from the duels whatsoever.
No, and I think, he's definitely energetic. He's a player who has kind of that youthful exuberance. Like he's not the very measured playmaker. He's not a Pirlo kind of player. He doesn't want, just to get the ball and to ping it here and there. He wants to play with dynamism and energy, and that's both in and out of possession. Also, again, when he receives the ball under pressure, he'll look for the contact to spin out. So again, he's not the kind of player who wants to move the ball away from the opposition and then avoid contact. Like he'll turn into the defender to spin away, and he'll back himself as well to dribble out of difficult situations. So those qualities I think are important. It's something that's been developing in the Colombian game a lot. These midfielders who have qualities, these kind of creative midfielders who have qualities of other positions, whether that be defensive midfielder who can be a playmaker, or a playmaker who can be a winger, or a playmaker who could dribble. Because traditionally, Colombia, you think of a playmaker, you think of James Rodriguez, you think of Quintero, Valderrama. And these are like luxury players to some extent. But Elan definitely isn't that. He's combative. He welcomes the duels, and he plays with intensity and speed as well, which I think the fans will like.
So would you think that as he grows and develops further in Europe now, do you think he will shape more into a number 8, or do you think that he'll be that number 6 that just has good footballing qualities that he utilizes as well?
I think it depends how much you want to play on the front foot, because if you want to have a solid base to the team, maybe you want to commit 2 or 3 players forward in the press, but you don't want the midfielders to leave space behind, then in that situation, I see him more as an 8. But if what you want is an aggressive press, like a Liverpool wouldn't have someone sitting between the back 4 when they're out of possession. They'd want to be proactive. And in that situation, I'd see him potentially as a 6. I think he'll drop deep to receive. So when in possession, he'll drop into the defense. He'll pick the ball up in the half spaces. He'll drift a little bit wide to get the ball. He'll go where he needs to go to get the ball. And when you're out of possession, again, if you're on an aggressive press, then he's the kind of player who maybe is the deepest of the midfielders, but is very actively looking, okay, there's the free man, wait for the pass, and then snap into a tackle quickly, as opposed to sitting off and waiting. So again, I imagine Beşiktaş, many of their games, you'll be on the front foot, you'll be favourites, you'll be looking to assert yourselves. So in those games,
we'd like to think so, but it isn't always like that, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, I think when you're looking to dominate, then I can see him as the deepest midfielder, but with being very active as opposed to adding a number in the back line.
Is he someone that, because one of the things that Beşiktaş have struggled with, not just this season, but also last season and honestly for a long time, something that Beşiktaş have always lacked is not that they have bad ball-playing central defenders right now, but some players that are composed and able to easily play out from under the pressure. And I feel like in the last couple of seasons, they have also lacked that midfielder to come and drop down and alleviate that pressure by helping out, maybe dropping in between the two central defenders. Do you think that's something he could do, and would that come natural to him?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in Colombia, again, people think South American football and they have all kinds of stereotypes. But in Colombia in particular, what is valued is short passing football and playing in close spaces. It comes from the street football, the micro football, the futsal, the ability to receive the ball under pressure and turn out and to have that confidence. And he's, to some extent, in the same way that Richard Rios has been so celebrated for this, he has qualities of a street footballer, which again is often something you associate with a winger or a forward player. But what he does is he's very comfortable receiving under pressure, and he's very confident on the ball. And again, that can be an issue going to a higher level of football or maybe a more intense level of football. A player who receives the ball and backs themselves to work their way out. And I'd say his dribbling ability is excellent, but it's not. There is some level of risk involved. So he will take risks, and it's not the kind of dribbling where you get the ball and you keep it super, super tight to your body and you're holding off the defender and you're looking only backwards. He's looking to spin. He's looking to use his speed. So, as I say, if he comes in and can get that confidence and bring those qualities across, then he's a player who can turn defense to attack very quickly. He can spin on the ball. He can hit a diagonal pass, and he can play with energy. So again, it's not your very conservative. Give me the ball, I'll give it back to the defenders, or I'll play it simple. Like, he's a player who has a high percentage of pass completion. We're talking like mid to high 80% pass completion. So he is consistent and solid on the ball, but also does like to back himself to work his way out of difficult situations and progress the ball. So again, it's the kind of situation where if he has a good game and those things all work, then he's going to be flying and you're going to have a really, really top player. But it's the kind of player who as well could make a few mistakes early on. And then obviously it's about keeping that confidence and keeping that positive feeling as well.
And is he a player that likes to play a lot of progressive passes forward? Somebody that opens up to the wings perhaps quite frequently, something that Al Musrati was always looking for. As soon as he received the ball, it's like he already had spotted where he wanted to put it, where his teammates were. Unfortunately, we didn't really have the wingers that could accommodate that. But now with the arrival of Cheche Arroyo from Independiente del Valle from Ecuador, for the first time, we probably have a decent winger in a while. You mentioned that he likes to feel the contact. He likes to turn away from his defender. Is that something that delays sometimes the pace in which he manages to transition into the game from defense into attack?
Yeah, it's a bit of that pausa, that waiting for the moment, and that can be a real asset if you're waiting for the fullback to overlap or you're waiting for the midfielder to break into space. And the ability to take your time and to hold off the defender, but with that eye on what's happening around you. So again, there are certain levels of risk to his game, which is a calculated risk, and it's a decision. It's not as though he gets the ball and his head's down. No, he's looking up to see what's happening and how the play develops. But again, it's not playing it simple. He takes responsibility for the game, which is something I like. But again, if you have a player around him who wants to get on the ball as quickly as possible, as I say, it's a quality I value a lot, but he's not going to get it and immediately pop it off straight away every time. He'll try to, as I say, resist possession. He'll try to play the diagonal pass. He gets a good number of passes forward and passes into the final third. And he gets a decent number of shots off as well for a 6'8". So, as I say, he's very active. He's very confident, and he participates and takes responsibility for games. Which, again, it's one of those qualities there. If it works, he becomes a fan favorite, and you love him. And if it doesn't, or there's some knocks, then again, it's something that can. It's easy to be a 7 out of 10 if you hide, and I'd say he isn't a player who hides. which is a quality I like a lot and is one of the reasons why he stood out in Colombia. But it's when it works very well, basically.
Mm-hmm. And going forward, you mentioned that he scored quite a few goals last season. He already scored 1 goal in 3 matches this season as well. I believe they played the city rivals Millonarios this past weekend, which is one of the big clubs. And of course, Beşiktaş fans will perhaps remember them because we once upon a time transferred Pedro Franco from them. That's 10 years ago, in fact. More than 10 years, 11 years almost. So is that something when he comes in that final third in that area of the pitch? Is he the type of player that is very eager to have a shot, somebody who knows and feels comfortable in that area of the pitch? Because sometimes you have players that are, 6s, 8s, and they play very well, but then as soon as they enter that final third, it's kind of like they're a fish out of water.
No, not at all. As I say, I think he's playing as a 6 because they want him to build the play, as opposed to him having attacking limitations. He strikes the ball very, very well, very cleanly. He's kind of got an elegance about the way he moves the ball and strikes the ball. I think if you asked him where he'd want to play, he'd want to play as a number 10. To be honest. So I think there's no concerns about kind of a lack of attacking output. He's also, creates chances. I think he's assisted a chance every other game on goal as well. So he's definitely a player who can play anywhere in midfield. Now, the Alexis McAllister comparison is to reflect the fact that you could stick him on the left midfield, central midfield, 10, 8, 6. And I think as well, he's the kind of player who people will look at and go, he should be a 6 or he should be a 10. I think depends on how you see the game and what quality in each position. You could put him anywhere. You could put him as a wing back. He can do a bit of everything because of that dynamism, that comfort on the ball, and that also the tenacity and that work rate. So, yeah, he's definitely a player who could fit kind of anywhere. If you play 2 holders, then it'd be perfect. You play him as an 8, he'd do well. You play 3 kind of flat in the midfield, he'd do well. So he's a player who finds space and looks to get on the ball, and he has good technical ability as well.
And is he a player that likes to skip a couple of stations and accelerate the game with long passes, or is he more somebody that likes to play it over the ground and play shorter passes?
Yeah, I think he's a player who has a good understanding that the short passes are necessary and short passes are important, but as a way to work into space and to break the press. So I think he passes the ball with intention, is what I'd say. So he definitely does like a longer pass, and he'll definitely switch the ball. He'll look to break the lines. He's not afraid of taking risks. But when you've got like 90% pass completion, it's not as though he tries to force it. So I think on average, he's hitting about 3 long passes per 90. So again, he's definitely selective when he hits that pass, and he's comfortable doing it, and he looks to play forward quite regularly, and his passes are effective. So I'd say again, he's not Steven Gerrard in 40-yard passes all the time, but they are very effective, and he does have a nice clean strike. So again, I'd say he plays with intention and with purpose, but he wants to get on the ball, he wants to move it and make things happen.
One thing that might be a little bit of a concern that a friend of mine noticed on Transfer Room, the transfer platform, this data might not be accurate, or maybe it's like a little skewed because of not playing full 90s or something. But one of the things that he noticed is that he has a very low distance covered, only 8,800 meters per game on average. Is that something that sounds accurate to you, or do you think that's perhaps a mistake or a skewed data segment?
I wouldn't discredit that. I'd say perhaps to some extent the team that he plays with focuses a lot on width, like wing backs or attacking wide areas. So I'd say perhaps that number is reflective of the fact that the drive, the thrust from the team, the long distance covered will be coming out wide, whereas he's more moving in small spaces in the middle to get on the ball. So I'd say he's quite sharp, and I'd say he does cover the ground well, but he's not often tasked at Equidad of making a 70-yard dash to the corner to overlap or to break past the strikers. He plays between the back line and the 10 and the forwards. He's in that area. So I'd say he's quite dynamic, but within quite a small space. And as I say, he'll move around and he'll get the ball and he'll look to find the pockets. But I'd say he's quite efficient in his movement, as opposed to a player who's tasked with covering huge amounts of ground in the current system he plays in.
Okay, so he's looking for the pockets of space for his teammates that they can then dive into, or do you mean he's looking for them himself off the ball, or?
Yeah, off the ball. So
okay.
There's the movement out wide, and he's looking to get on the ball and break the lines, whether that be turning out or whether that be playing through to a 10 or whatever. So I think he's quite dynamic within the area that he's given in this particular system.
And I have two more questions, if that's okay. So one of the things that is at the moment one of Beşiktaş's strengths is one of their best players. In fact, probably the best player is Rafa Silva, who played for years for Benfica, and one of his probably strongest traits is his ability to find those pockets of space, to dive into them with his tremendous pace, his well-timed runs. Do you think he's somebody that can pick out those runs and give him the killer through ball?
Yeah, I definitely feel that the ability to play those passes is something that's important for Ricardo. I think, I'd see him being able to find those passes. He's got a very nice ping on the pass. And he's a young player and getting that consistency and getting that confidence as well within a new league. It's going to be part of the process, but I definitely see his technical ability as facilitating those kind of passes. Like, he has a looseness to his play. He's not a very kind of rigid, fixed kind of player. He has kind of an elegance and a bounce, and it means that he can get the ball out of his feet quickly and can easily kind of ping a really nice pass or a shot from range. So he definitely has the range in his passing, and it's just about getting him in the right spaces and getting that confidence to make those passes, I'd say.
He sounds like a player that has stylistically made an impression on you, a positive impression. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think, as I say, look, the player who Colombians are most excited about is Richard Rios, who's a futsal player who became a football player, and he plays a defensive midfield role and has that aggression and that bite, and is a player linked with Man United and the top teams. I can see some of that in Ricardo, and I can see Ricardo as representing the new mold of Colombian midfielders quite well. Because before, Colombia had the destroyers, the Carlos Sanchez, the very defensive Wilmar Barrios, predominantly defensive ball winners who get it and just give it. And they had the 10s, the Valderramas, the James, who were the guys in charge of doing all of the creative stuff. And what I see with Ricardo is embodying a combination of both. And that's what Colombian football is developing. And that's why Colombia has been so successful at full national team level recently. It's those players who perhaps once would have been considered wingers or forwards because of their ability on the ball, their dribbling ability, their creativity, and now developing that are enjoying the defensive side of the game more and more. And Ricardo is a player who kind of embodies that. It's a little bit surprising he hasn't been more involved in the national team. 2 years ago, he was involved in some microciclos, some training camps with the U20s. But again, if this goes well, he's definitely a player who fits the mold of what the current national team is looking for. Because the national team at the moment is all about players who fulfill multiple roles and are defensively strong, but also comfortable on the ball and can play those tight passes, exchanges, and that kind of stuff. So if this goes well, then he's definitely a player I see fitting well into the national team in the coming years as well.
Sounds extremely exciting. Then my final real question before we get to our conclusion. You mentioned, I believe, his way that his technique that he kicks the ball with. He has a specific style, a good hard shot. Is he also somebody that is known for set pieces, or is that something that perhaps he hasn't been able to showcase, or you just think it's not really in his wheelhouse?
No, it's definitely an area that he could. He definitely somebody could contribute. He's taken some penalties. He's a player, who has the quality and the kind of the poise and the elegance to be good in that area. Again, it's I think he's between those creative players and the defensive players, and often the defensive players don't get the first shot at taking these set pieces. But he's definitely something that I can see him doing, because he scored 35-yard, 40-yard drives at goal. I definitely see him more as a set piece taker from distance, because he definitely likes to strike the ball with power. And you know, he scored a header this week, so he's obviously a threat from set pieces in terms of getting in the box. But yeah, no, not quite. I wouldn't see him coming in and being a set piece taker straight away. But perhaps some of those free kicks from range, if he gets into a good range, set of form, then maybe he'll step up and put himself forward. And I can see him hitting some nice, powerful free kicks from distance.
All right. So as a conclusion, Simon, Beşiktaş are trying to turn a new leaf. Turkish clubs are, of course, known for their exorbitant spending, usually on aging stars. And Beşiktaş's new president, Serdar Adalı, and also new coach, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, they want to change the club fundamentally, and that is starting with signings like this, signings like Kenya Arroyo. These are players that are younger. Kenya Arroyo turning 19 this week, and of course Elan is turning 21 a little bit later this week, on the 20th, in fact. Do you see him as a player that Beşiktaş can hone, polish, and then move on to one of the top 5 leagues? Do you think he has that in him to be a player in, for example, the Premier League or the Bundesliga or something of that level?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, definitely. I think Beşiktaş have benefited in this instance from the window closing elsewhere in Europe, because I think Equidad have been looking for the right sale for him for a while. There's been interest from clubs across Europe, and they couldn't come to the right deal. And I think it feels as though they feel this is the time to move him, and Beşiktaş is getting a great deal, I think, in terms of the cost of the transfer. Quite reasonable. Particularly
reported fee of $2 million.
Yeah, it feels good for a 20-year-old of his quality and of his experience. So I think they're getting a pretty good deal because the other windows are closed. It's always the risk for Turkish clubs. You wait until the other windows close, and then either you're left missing out on players that you wanted to sign, or you're in a pole position to go for the guys who are still there. Because his club is one of the smaller ones, it feels as though they were very keen to cash in on the player. It's the right time for him to move. His value is going to kind of plateau if he stays there too long as he gets older, because European clubs are Colombians at a young age. So it feels as though it's the right time for the move. And as you mentioned, with this change in the club, it feels like an interesting environment. No, as I say, I think there's obviously an element of risk signing from South America, but I think he's a player who has all of the qualities to be a great bit of business. You're getting him at a fair price. He's a young player with scope to improve, and I think he'll give you something. He's got enough to his game where you're not relying on just getting those assists or just being an incredible defender. Even if he's a 6, 7 out of 10 in terms of his performances, he's going to give you energy. He's going to give you the ability to progress the ball. He's going to be confident. So I think if it works perfectly, you're getting an incredible bargain and a very complete player. And at the very least, you're getting a player with a lot of energy, a lot of work rate, a lot of ability on the ball. So he's going to bring you something. So we'll have to see what that is.
All right. Thank you very much for your time, Simon. Where can people find you online, by the way? Do you have an X account, a Twitter account that you still frequent?
Yeah, so at Simon Edwards SAF on X. I'm a little bit less active now, but any kind of work I do, I tend to share up there. And any questions, feel free to send me a message and I'll try to reply.
All right, awesome. Thank you very much, Simon. And thank you for watching this episode of the Black Eagles podcast on the player highlights on our new signing, Élan Ricardo from La Equidad in Colombia. And he is arriving tonight at 4 o'clock local time, so we have to wait a little bit longer to see him arrive at the airport. Let us know if you're going to greet him at the airport. Leave a comment, like and subscribe, and don't forget, go Beşiktaş.